Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Sticky Notes Chat. This is our 20th
20.
episode.
Whoa.
I know, it's ridiculous, isn't it? When we started this, I was like, yeah, let's see how this goes. But we've got lots of, yeah, two or three. We started off thinking we'd do every other week, and then we thought, oh, well, this is kind of fun. Let's do every week. So, yeah, this is now our 20th episode. Um, Welcome to everybody who's joining us live. We love it when you interact with us, so please ask us questions and leave your comments about your experiences as we go through. If you're watching this subsequently, you missed it. Ha! But you can still talk to us. We have email chat@stickynotes.chat. You can tweet us at stickynoteschat. We have a website where all of our previous 19 episodes live. That's stickynotes.chat. And we're streaming this to LinkedIn and also to YouTube. So on LinkedIn, you can get in touch with us, any of us individually. And also, if you follow the hashtag Sticky Notes Chat, you will see all the conversations that are going on around this particular topic. So that's that. I'm here with
And we
Cory.
should
Oh,
throw in also for anyone who's like following in the States following this election day news, this is your break. So
yes.
no election day news, no
Did,
nothing, no
did
stats.
you take your tracker off this other screen, to Corey, or is it still up on the screen? It's still up on the screen, yeah. So we were having a little conversation beforehand. It's like, nah, elections, not much we can do at this point, but a lot riding on things. So yeah, Corey's following along on his second screen. I don't have a screen up right now, but yeah, it's this is your election content free 45 minutes or so.
Our
What are we
little,
talking?
our little bubble of UX.
Afterwards, we'll burst your bubble and you can get back to reality. But for this little time, it's a comfy little bubble of UX. So, what are we talking about this week? We are talking about getting teams started doing UX work. This is the situation where you, as an individual, care about user experience, whether you have a background in it or whether you're just learning more about it right now. The rest of the team doesn't seem to care quite so much as you do. What can you do to help get them more interested and involved in doing user experience work? So yeah, I mean, this is one of those things where it's difficult to have a lot of impact on a team if you're the only person who cares about users. Um, so this is one of those things that we really do have a lot of impact on teams when we involve them. It's much more difficult to have an impact on a team when you're not involving the rest of them. So how do we do that? How do we do that? Um,
And I think the scope of our discussion can be very inclusive. Certainly, we've got the you work in house in a team. You work externally. I mean, you pop in for your consulting engagement, whatever it might be.
yeah,
As the oh yeah, we all do UX, but thanks for being here and make it all work. So it doesn't really matter where you're coming from. I mean, ultimately, I think that the problem, the puzzle is the same really, no matter which way you cut it.
yeah, definitely. I mean, to an extent, I get called into some organizations who think they want some user experience help, but the team isn't. Somebody on the team brought me in, but the rest of the team isn't necessarily bought in as much as they could be. So working as a consultant, definitely, I've got some of the same challenges as if you're working as part of a team or working in an organization where you work with multiple different teams in more of a service role. So I guess I'll start off then by thinking about, well, what can you do? And one of my biggest suggestions to people is make sure that whatever you're doing to try and get the team involved in doing user experience work is reducing their workload rather than increasing their workload. I think one of the reasons that people get concerned about getting UX involvement is that they realize it's going to be extra work or even rework. If they've already built something, you come along and do a usability test of it and tell them it's all broken and needs to change, then that's something that they invested time in, and now that thing that they built, you're telling them it's broken. Nobody wants to hear their baby's ugly. So there's other ways of doing things that help get around that problem. And one of those is to get involved much earlier before they've built anything. And that way, you can help them to avoid some of the issues, and you can also point out where you help them avoid the issues, so that they realize what kind of benefit you're bringing to their team. Corey, any examples of that? Any experiences you've had around that?
Right. So I guess I caveat it first of all by saying, um, what's your power to kind of get in early, make a
Yeah,
difference.
yeah.
Because in my experience, it's not always that easy
Hmm.
to kind of break in, and sometimes the break in point. So I guess first of all, it's where the break-in point really is. Where is that point where you can kind of insert yourself and say, okay, yeah, I'm here, and I'm a UXer, and I'm happy to help, and happy to kind of think through these processes, and kind of lead some workshops, and we can all work together, and it's awesome. And other times, it's I get a call like, hi, okay, so we're ready to start a usability study tomorrow. Okay, just jump in, do the study, and go. Like, wow, yeah. So where that point is, so certainly kind of in my role as that generally a contract researcher, sometimes it has been pretty early. Sometimes it's
Hmm.
been, where we're kicking off a project. We want to get you in early. We want to, we've got. I remember there was one project which was using Safe Agile. You're basically multiple agile streams, like
Yeah.
all simultaneously, whatever, and you're gonna be kind of popping into different ones of them, but you're here at the beginning, so you'll help us figure out how you'll do that, and we'll talk through and all. Um, so then it was kind of like, oh yeah, thank you, thank you for getting me in early, for helping think through the process, for figuring it out. And not only me, I was the researcher, and there was also a UX designer as well, kind of going through this process. But like I say, other times, it just sometimes it's you come in later, and then you say, okay, well, how can I affect change now? Where I am, as a researcher, when I just got to do the research, when you just invite me to do the research. Okay, fine. I'll do the research, and now let's look at the results together,
Hmm.
and let's back up a few steps and say, okay, no, your product is not ready for release tomorrow. Sure, go for it. But plan on another iteration, another several iterations where you can really work out some of these kinks.
And even then, even if, I mean, so there is, like you say, if you want to eat, you have to get work, and if sometimes that work is these last minute things, even then, there's you do the work. You could throw the report over the fence to somebody. You can say, "Here you go. Here's your report," and you could walk away, or you could sit down with them and you could work with the team, and say, "Hey, this is the kind of thing that I saw was a problem. Here's my recommendation, but is that implementable? Is that something you can do? Oh, it's not. Well, what could you do?" And then talking through with them until they get to till you and they can come up with some kind of answer that helps them um, through the problem without causing them too much rework. It might be. I mean, you might not have all the solutions as a UX person, but when you're talking with the development team, they can often point you toward. You can point them towards thinking through things that get them to a much cheaper solution than you might have come up with on your own. And then they feel good because they came up with a solution, and you feel good because you're helping users out, and everybody wins. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it sounds so easy. It just, yeah. No, but I think for me, it's been a learning curve over my whole career, where I really feel like I started out kind of just grumpy and irritable about the whole, like, not really, but like I felt like, I would give the report, and then I'd be like, well, you're not really doing this. You really need to do this. Okay, you really need to do this. And it wasn't until later in my career when, I think we've talked about before in other topics as well, but where I could finally kind of back up a little bit and say, you know what, I'm not going to change the world, but I'm going to do my part. I'm going to kind of insert myself where you let me insert myself, and where you don't, okay, no harm done. No, 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 no problem.
And
We'll maybe.
this continues from previous conversations we've had around your attitude to this, which is like, I used to care a lot more. These
Yeah,
days, I'm just happy if anything happens that's UX related. Yeah.
right. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's. I mean, my personal belief now is, my personal belief now really is, you do what you can, and you're happy about it, and you don't stress too much, and you can make just as much, if not more, of a difference that way.
It's true. Hey, we've just got Amanda. She was running late in the meeting. She's going to join us now. I'm going to add her to the
We can.
stream. There we go. Hey,
Hi.
Amanda.
Speaking of
Hi.
Speaking of doing the best we can, that's me today. How are
So,
you?
well, hey Amanda. So we got started without you
I
because
appreciate that. I'm very sorry to be late.
and for you and for the people who are watching who may have joined slightly after we started, here is what we're talking about this week. How can I get my team started doing UX work? So anybody who's watching, they might think we kind of rehearse all this stuff beforehand. Nope.
Clearly not.
Topic, what are we talking about? Oh, wow.
We had something written down. Oh yeah, let's do that. Yeah. So Amanda, this is what we're talking about, starting out. And I was we've only just started out talking about starting out. And the first thing that I was saying to Cory was, I want one of the things I find that really helps is if you can, if you want to get your team started doing user experience work, and they're reluctant. One of the reasons for being reluctant might be because they're worried you're going to increase their workload. So anything you can do that reduces their workload is gonna help out there, or anything you can do that shows them that you're not actually going to be making it harder for them. You're actually going to be making it easier for them. Easier said than done a lot of the time. And Cory's counterpoint to that, which is always very good at giving, is sometimes you don't get that chance. I mean, if somebody brings you in and is like, "Yeah, we want you to run a usability test tomorrow," it's probable that it's a bit late in the process for you to really give them a whole ton of low impact rework that's going to help them really improve the product. But you can still do a little bit, and this is your in right to the team, and it's your way of dealing with them. I think Cory and I agreed that if you can actually work with the team after you deliver the report to find even the tiniest things that make the user experience better without a massive impact on the team, that's going to be a win for you. Um,
And
so
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, and I say, and don't go rogue. Don't say, I'm going to just do my thing. I'm gonna make some new wireframes for you. I'm gonna do some research for you, and not part of your timeline. It's just because you need it. The problem is when you do that, then they won't. Your
Mm.
output, your output will be not necessarily so useful.
yeah.
I will put a counterpoint to that, which is I would say don't go rogue unhelpfully,
Hmm.
but if you can find a way to sneak things in without permission, but that do actually help people and save them time. I've never had anybody say to me, "Man, I wish you hadn't done that." After I gave them something valuable, especially if it was something like a thing where people were having a really hard time making a decision, and I was able to go find them some research or go run a quick study to do research. Now, it can be a double-edged sword, but I actually think that is how I've won some of my biggest advocates. Was I didn't wait until we had all the right stuff or all the right budget or all the right timeline to do things we needed to. I was kind of proactive about saying, like, hey, this is an issue. Like, we could use some data here. Let me see if I can find some for you. But it's also in how you couch it and sell it, right? It's not like I went rogue because I don't care what your plan is. It's like I went rogue because I wanted to help, and I can make your life easier. And I was able to do that. So I've had success going the other way, but I think it also depends a lot on your relationship capital
Right.
and
There's a lot of politics around that. If the first time you share
mhm,
that data is in some massive meeting with the boss in the room, and
mhm.
you're trying to convince them to make a change, and the boss loves it and the team hates it, what did you just do? You just made yourself into an enemy of the team.
That's so right.
Right. So I mean, I can give you an example. Just last week I did a remote usability study, and as we were going, we went through. They figured out the task, doing the tasks, and as we were doing it, it only covered a subset of the product. It was like here's our common tasks. What I realized when I became familiar with more of the product was that these common tasks actually like ripple to like other sites, parts unseen in our
Mm.
study. And so I said to the client, I don't think this usability study is going to give you the scope that you need to fix the product. There's lessons learned, and we need to start applying these to other things. Can we do? I would like to add, within the existing contract, it was kind of a tally of labor hours anyway.
Mhm.
But I'd like to add just a few labor hours to expand to more of like an expert review kind of thing, taking lessons learned, taking best practices, and kind of expanding it out. And the client's like, you know what, I see where you're coming from. That's a good idea. So the idea of, certainly in the contracting world of like inserting yourself kind of, I'd say, not necessarily in the go rogue kind of way, but kind of saying, well, we need like, like a little bit of an adaptation to the process, which you can certainly do in-house as well. Whatever that might be, I think I totally agree. I think it's certainly very valuable.
Do you think it helped at that point the client had already seen the same things as you'd seen with the users, the actual user tasks and what was happening?
Yeah, for sure. The client was, the client was observing. I mean, it was a remote study. The client was observing as well. So when I said, these, and I gave some concrete examples. This is a terminology thing. This is a kind of an interface thing. But you do this elsewhere. So let's understand what you do elsewhere, both in kind of the interaction between screens, as well as what's on each screen, just to kind of generalize out and say this is beyond the study. Because as a researcher, when I do a study, I want to say this is from your research. And while I want to say more, if I say that, it's got to be couched as this is not from your research. You got to be when you do research, you don't just insert yourself. At least I don't believe a researcher should insert themselves secretly. Like, okay, here's a result from the study, when it's not actually a result from the study, when it's a personal finding, no matter how valid you think it might be.
You'll get caught out.
Well, those are different. Yeah, those are kind of different things, right? I think like finding information that people need if you haven't been explicitly planning for it is different than inserting non-results. That's different. In my book, like I wouldn't consider those in the same category of going rogue.
Yeah.
I mean, they're both two sides of the same. One's with permission, one's without permission. Basically, one's with permission and documentation or annotation or something like research finding, expert review finding. And that's good. And the other is it's all secretive. I'm a secret researcher. I have an agenda, and I'm not telling you what it is.
I don't think I'd ever make that face.
It's never going to end well if you go that way. I mean, this is one of the things we've talked about this before, about speaking from data rather than opinion, or when you do speak from opinion, always listing that as this is my opinion based on my expertise doing this kind of stuff before. This is data from your study. And those two things are different. And when I do expert reviews, it's based on my experience with watching users working through other people's products at different times. But and general principles, but that's different from actual data that came from observing users working with the product. So I was going to take it that little step further and say, so I asked Cory whether the client had already been exposed to watching users by the time you proposed this change. I think that's one of the big things is if you can get people to actually see user pain, that's one of the best ways of getting people onto your side. How can you get people started doing UX is getting them to see user pain firsthand. Amanda's nodding here.
Well, for sure. But that's one of the chicken and egg things, right? Like that's actually a thing that I hear people say all the time is the hardest to get, right? Is like, if only you were there watching the sessions, you would have seen how grimacing these people were. So I kind of joke about it, but I'm not even kidding. I find creative ways to make it interesting to come to my sessions, which in person meant like I did things like at one of my old companies, I would half bake a loaf of banana bread at home and I would finish baking it in the toaster oven at the office and you could have some if you came in and watched.
And the whole office could smell the,
And it was straight up bribery, and I did not care, but it was really effective. And so I joke about it, but there's lots of different ways depending on what it is to, to make it not a chore for people to be a part of that, right? Because I do hear that all the time as people being like, there's no way I can put 10 research sessions on my team's calendar. They already have a million meetings. There's no way I can ask for that much time from them. The other thing is that being smart about the way that you kind of display the data back to people or communicate it back. you know, let's be honest, like a lot of times we end up writing reports or making decks because we have to, but that's not usually what people are most engaged with. And so being creative about how it depends a lot on your relationship, whether you're working in a team or if you're in a client consulting relationship, but figuring out it's like UXing your audience, right? Like figuring out the audience you're talking to and then giving them engaging things to interact with. So if you're talking to a bunch of finance people, tell them how much money they're wasting. if you're talking to a bunch of developers, tell them like how much of their code is not being used or whatever. You know, like find a way to make whatever you find and that pain in particular. Find a way to connect it to whatever the people you want to hear about it makes sense to them.
I mean, I think that's also a good general UX soft skill. I think it is, as a UX professional, being able to talk to each audience group in terms in a framework that they understand. Talk to developers kind of with an eye to the code. Talk to the C-suite people with an eye to the finance and the bottom line. Talk to each group. At each, like interact with and also, I mean, that's what makes a good researcher too. I mean, is you get these, who knows what kind of participants you'll end up with, like what their job is, what their educational background is, what their expectations around technology are. And being able to communicate in a way that is solidly like, no, I'm not someone with this education, this background, this whatever, and that's the only way I can communicate. Is you've got to be flexible and adaptive in the way you communicate with different people that match their kind of mental models about their career, about their the language they use, and so on.
So definitely being able to talk with people in their own language. What about this? So one thing that I found I never used to do as much as I should have done was talking to people one-on-one on the team, going and sitting with them when they were working and even sitting, I mean, we call it pairing these days, but sitting with them while they worked and helping them through a thing, especially after I'd kind of delivered a report, here's that report on somebody's desk, which they're never going to read. It's like, hey, there's some things that probably wouldn't take much time to fix. Do you mind looking at this thing right now with me and then going through it, and then also talking, for instance, with people on the product management team, the people who are coming up with new features for the future, or talking with people in marketing, or just all the different people on the immediate development team and on the broader team, one-on-one, until they knew who I was, and always trying to find a way of adding value for them, giving them something that made them successful. So the marketing team, what can I tell you about your audience that you don't know already, that could help you find something that resonates so you can sell this product better? Developers, what can I tell you about your code that would help you be more successful as a coder, and make a product that people loved more? Management, what can I tell you that's going to make us more money? All those different things. So yeah, it's part of that same changing your conversation with who you have, but having those conversations one-on-one as well.
I might even throw out not even one-on-one, but like 4-on-1. Basically it's there's some sweet spot where, and also it's not just those conversations, being able to say, hey, let's go out for coffee and just talk about life. Don't even talk about work.
Oh, Cory's a real person. He's
Right.
just this guy.
Like, oh, here's this is my life. This is my family. This is whatever. It's building those relationships is so important as well, and really kind of, and I don't know what the sweet spot is, because as a person who jumps in, if there's too many of the client, and there's me, they all have their own interactions, they continue conversations. If it's too small, then you may run out of stuff, or they'll be like, oh, pause and whatever. There's some sweet spot, greater than 1 and less than 10, where, and probably changes. There's not one sweet spot. There's multiple sweet spots, but where like you have the perfect mix of people, like the perfect number of people to really kind of let everyone say a few words about their life and and non-work stuff and whatever, and you're building rapport. And by building rapport, you in turn can then have the relationships, which, as for us, jumping in, it's kind of, they're new relationships,
Right.
often. But even if you're on the team, building those relationships, having the team happy hour, the team goes out to lunch, the team gets lunch in, whatever.
If you get an invite to lunch with the team, go.
Yeah, because that's number one, is those relationships are how you can affect change as a UXer. Building, and it's not just to have an agenda, but it's also nice. To get to know people, as people, not just as worker bees that are along with you, another worker bee, doing your job.
It might also help you find find out more about who that individual is, so that you find their communication style, how they prefer to think about the world, so that you can then adapt to that when you're talking with them about the user experience findings you want to implement. So anybody watching who's got questions or who's got their own experiences about getting teams started doing UX, please add comments in the comments window in LinkedIn. If you're live with us right now, love to know what you think about this. So we've talked about reducing workload for people rather than increasing it. We've talked about pairing or working one-on-one or in small groups with people to try and have that more individual impact. We've talked about helping them see benefit in what you do. What else is there that you can do? Oh, we've also talked about speaking from data rather than opinion, or at least labeling opinion as opinion. What else is there that we can do to help teams to understand what we do and want to include us earlier in the process, where we can actually have more benefit?
We covered a pretty wide range of things.
We're only half an hour in.
I know.
Okay, that's it. We're done.
Well, what I was going to say, though, is I kind of wanted to expand on the, it's sort of a catch-22, right? Like, if you exist in an organization and you are coming from a UX background, they must have had some need at some point that they thought it was a good idea to hire a UX person, right? So the other thing that I would kind of expand on, one of our earlier points, is to figure out, in a positive way, but to figure out what the pain point was internally too, right? Like, not just for the users, but for why is it that at some point along the way they decided to hire a researcher, or even if they didn't hire a researcher, even if they hired a UX unicorn and you're now trying to push for something, there must have been somewhere along the way where somebody with control over the pocketbook had at least some say that we need this kind of role, right? So one of the things I would kind of expand upon, not just understanding your audience and who you're talking to, but try to understand what is your organization trying to do? What is the business value? Is it, I think a lot of times we talk about earning more money, and certainly that's true, but maybe it's you're saving time for people when you know that you can.
Reducing support calls. We've got so many support calls that we need. We can't.
Yeah.
Can't keep up with it.
Or reducing errors, or there's lots of different ways also that you can look at things, and I think that some of the times, especially when we're focused on building something brand new, there's the idea that a UX person can impede progress. But sometimes if you start, which I don't agree with at all, but it's a thing.
It's out there. Yeah,
it's an impression. And so I think that sometimes if you can say, well, let me work on this other thing that already exists and you're not doing anything about anyway, I won't get in your way, right? I'm not going to mess with, which, let's be honest, I'm always in everyone's way because that's just how I roll. But but if you can kind of say let me start with this thing. It sounds counterintuitive, but let me start with this thing that's actually a little bit less on your radar or a little bit less important to you. And then not in a bad, sneaky way, but you could kind of be look, it was sneaky successful. Look how much we were able to, reduce errors or reduce phone calls or whatever it is that you're able to do. Find something tangible that you can prove success on that maybe actually isn't the most important thing that the company is focused on overall, but that does have actual impact. And see if you can make a case study out of that.
So tangible benefit. I mean, this is one of the things, isn't it? It's like, and it has to be a benefit that the team will care about. But like I say, it doesn't have to be their primary thing. Sure, it'd be lovely if you could get, if you could show moving the needle on whatever the primary thing is they care about. But even if it's something that they didn't even know was a problem, but you've still made it better, that can be good. And to your point, I mean, I remember about not not necessarily working on the thing which is currently about to go live. I remember working years ago in an organization on a messaging product, and it was one of the first times the company had actually been releasing to the web. It was a service rather than a piece of software that came in a box. Um, and so they were releasing on a, I don't know, 3 month cycle, maybe even shorter than that. And they asked me to get involved, and I said, I can't really do much with this release you're working on right now. By the time I get involved, you'll be too close to shipping. Let me work with the people who are thinking about the next release. And they always had like a little group of 2 or 3 people who were working to look at what they were going to be doing next. Let me work with them instead. I'll have more benefit to you doing that. And luckily, they believed me. And we made so many changes in that next release based on research we did using the current version as our research base, and also some other stuff we did looking at how people use these products generally. We made so many positive changes and showed so much improvement that they were super happy with the results from doing that.
Right.
So yeah, that's one way definitely of showing success. If you've got, and Corey was talking about this actually, Amanda, before you came on. He was like, sometimes you don't have the capacity to ask to do that. You don't have the permission to go do it. It's like, well, no, we want you to do a usability test of this current version because it's going out soon, and they just don't. And if you can help somebody understand, yeah, but what's that going to tell you? Or you know what? I'll give you a pass on this one. We know what the usability is going to be like on it. Let's just, yeah, we'll check the box. Let's pretend we did the usability test on this one. If that oversight governance group that tells you you have to do usability tests, us, I'll tell them you did, but let's not bother with that. Let's move on to the next stuff. You've kind of helped them out because they didn't feel they had to do it, and now you can go on to doing more fun things instead.
Yeah. Well, and to that point, the cadence, right? Like, I think that is actually often a place where researchers get in trouble is they're like, well, let me usability test the thing you're about to put live. And then right before tell you all the things that's wrong with it. Gee, I wonder why nobody ever asks me to do this again. Because I sweep in and tell them how crappy what they're about to release is, and they don't really have any valid way to contend with that, right? Like, they can't stop their release, they can't slow down, they might even know some of these things are problems. So to that point, like, thinking about the cadence of when you can help, and to your point, like, maybe pushing off and say, you know what, no, let's not think about the stuff that's already going live. That was kind of what I was getting at too, with the, like, let's maybe look at something that's a little less high priority or off the radar a little bit, because it typically means that you're not swooping in at the last minute and being like, the thing you're about to do is a terrible idea.
Yeah. I mean, I think, look, I when I have the opportunity, I tell clients, they say one usability study in like a month. So I say, okay, that's fine. Can we plan on design critique workshop-y kind of thing a month prior, where we can go through, give you opportunity. If that can fit into your schedule, if we can make it work, let's fix the stuff that I can tell you pretty much is going to cause problem. I can't guarantee you it's the problem for the study, but problem overall. If we can get that low-hanging fruit, get those words tweaked, get the button names changed, whatever, we can then have our study focus on the stuff that's really going to matter, which we don't know, which we can't anticipate. And I have, like, there's certainly some clients where they're like, oh yeah, we're ready for the design critique workshop. Others are like, no, we just need the study. That's it,
Yeah.
and that's so
Yeah,
yeah.
I typically, Amanda mentioned something earlier, which is aligned with this as well, which is working out what matters. What's your client's goals? What is it that you could, if you know what your client's goals are, it's more likely you can help them meet those goals. Something I definitely do when I'm talking with new clients is ask them why they wanted me involved. Not why did you want me involved, but what is it what's the problem you're trying to solve right now? Because I could go in and just give them a whole bunch of recommendations back that aren't going to help them. But if I can give them recommendations around the area that they care about, That really helps us out. Another thing that comes out of learning those goals is I might well find out that what they've asked me for isn't necessarily the best way of achieving those goals. So to Cory, to your point of, well, yeah, I can give the usability study, but let's make sure it's the best usability study it can be by doing a little design critique beforehand. I can often save clients money by saying that thing you want to do, that's quite an expensive and time consuming thing. Why don't we just start with this other thing? Like for instance, doing a design critique before doing a usability study. You'll get stuff you can work on for a while. When you've done that, then you'll be in a better position to do some of this other work you wanted to do. Or even again, I'll tell clients you're too close to release. Let's face it, what are you really going to do with any results I give you? You're going to use this for the next release? If you are, let's not think about this release. Let's use that for some of our studies we do, but let's maybe think about what we could do longer term that's going to help you out for your next release instead. Clients don't always like hearing that, but I think they appreciate truthfulness in those situations.
I mean, and to your point about scaling back, I mean, I'll tell you honestly that, when I look for projects, they're like, oh, we have a project. It's going to last 6 months full time. I'm like, ooh. Um, I much prefer projects that are smaller,
Hmm.
certainly. And but I'll say to the clients, look, I'm the external consultant. I'm probably going. Your in-house team is probably going to be, more economical for you to do some of the stuff. So let's figure out, where I can add value, as the outsider, certainly in that conversation, where I can add value to you the most. Let me do that. And then, for stuff that your team can do, I can guide them, I can work with them, and you're going to lower your cost, for the external consultant person, and I'm happy because it's a smaller project, which I prefer the puzzle piece model where you get lots of little puzzle pieces and you're like, yeah, puzzle piece, puzzle piece, yeah, oh good, they all fit. Oh no, they don't. But
Well, and I think to go back to about like thinking about where you can really add value is like asking people what they want is not the same thing. Like, what do you think you need versus like, what does success look like? Like output versus outcome. Like, yeah, I can run you a usability test or a card sort or whatever. But if ultimately your goal doesn't align with what any of those things would do, um, like let's talk about that. And I think the same can be done whether you are like us, external consultants, or if you're working in house. Like I certainly did that all the time in house. People would come to me and be like, "Can you run a survey about X?" And I'd be like, "Sure, but no, I'm not going to do that. What do you actually need? Like, why? What are you trying to do?" So yeah, I mean, I think you can kind of have that same conversation about value and about like, what do we actually need? What would actually help the team, regardless of kind of what circumstance you're in.
So there's a lot of what we've talked about now has assumed that the person that we're talking to is actually somebody who's got UX experience, who's trying
It's
to get
true.
into a team, right? Who's I'm working with a team. They obviously saw some value in having me here. Now, how do I improve on what I'm delivering to this team? What about the people who are have got turned on to the idea that UX is a good idea? Maybe they're the first person in their group, in their team, that's in that position, and now they're like, I don't really know what I could be doing to help the rest of the team understand this. There are some there are some other things that people can do on a team to help the rest of the team understand that UX is a good thing, even if they don't have any necessarily any UX skills. And the two that come to mind is things like a cognitive walkthrough, or a heuristic evaluation. Um, yes, no, agree with me, disagree with me? And shall
um,
we explain what both of those are as well?
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, I think maybe we ought to if we're talking to people who are not in US.
yeah.
So, okay, let's do that quickly. Cognitive walkthrough is walking through an area of your user experience, screen by screen, and asking a couple of very basic questions on each screen. Does somebody know how they got here? As a user of the product, know how they got here? Do they know what they should be doing on the screen? And do they know what they should be doing next? Also, how to proceed. Um, so, so that you sit down with a team in a room. You or online these days, you display the screens on the somewhere where everybody can see them, and you ask those three questions. And you do it with a particular user type in mind, not my mom or not me, but the person the persona of who is going to be using this product. Um, and it's actually really powerful as a way of looking at your product through somebody else's eyes, even if you don't have, even if you're not running a usability study with real somebody else watching. Have you guys used that approach before?
Yes. I often couch the cognitive walkthrough more as a design critique workshop. I mean, I suppose there's different definitions of what that might mean in a design critique
Mm-hmm.
workshop, but by and large, going through screen by screen with the team. Well, first, actually, kind of framing who are our users. They're everyone. No, they're not everyone, but we want to market to everyone. No, it's not everyone. Really, it's not everyone. But basically, kind of framing out, even if your users are, anybody can use our product. No, so figuring out, narrowing down to, yes, people who do mobile banking or whatever. Focusing on kind of a subset of the everyone, and then once we define that together in our workshop or in our cognitive walkthrough, we then go through screen by screen, like you say, and such. But yes, I absolutely, I love doing that, and adding. And I think it adds a lot of value to a later research study. In terms of the kind of doing the like expert review or heuristic review. I often find when I'm asked for that, it gets thrown over the fence. It's like it's much less likely to be, oh, let's present findings and discuss it. It's often the usability study, oh, this is a big effort, let's discuss it. The heuristic review, it's like, okay, well, give me the bullets. So trying to frame it is harder than doing the let's walk through together. It's usually, I personally find it's easier to get instant buy-in when we're all together than it is for me to go up to myself and pass off some bullet points or screenshots or annotations or whatever.
I guess that's one reason for that might be because everybody else at least had a reason to understand the justifications everybody in the room was giving for why they thought a certain thing was an issue or not, and you can have a conversation around it rather than just being some expert opinion. Cory says, or Amanda says, or Chris says. It's like, oh yeah, look, I can see people having a problem with this, or oh look, even if it's not a problem, it could be better. Look, we used a word here which isn't a common word for people to understand, or it's not really clear why people are on this screen, or it's not really clear what they need to do when they're on the screen. There's 5 different things they could do rather than one path through, or whatever else it is. Even without a background in design or user experience, when you do that kind of cognitive walkthrough with a team, they can begin to understand a lot of the issues that might happen, and it becomes something that they can use in their own as they're starting working on their own, doing stuff outside of that meeting. It's like, is it clear why somebody got to this page? Is it clear what they need to do on this page? Is it clear where they need to go next? Those 3 questions, very simple questions, which make it which make it difficult to make excuses for why the screen is bad in the first place. Yeah. Heuristic evaluations, just to be clear for people who don't know what those are, it's where you go through a list of common interface rules, like make sure that any error messages are clear and explain what you need to do. That's an interface rule. It's a heuristic. Jacob Nielsen came up with a set of 10. They're ones that people often use for going through this, and you go through each page or each screen. You can either do it individually and then get together and meet and say, well, which of these heuristics do you think apply to this screen? Or you can do it in a room. And everybody goes through and says, well, this part of the interface breaks these rules. Is that okay? And it might be that it's okay, but most of the time it means that it might be something you want to change in your interface. If people want to find out more about both those techniques, quick product plug. I have 2 very short courses on LinkedIn Learning about those, part of a weekly series I made, one on heuristic evaluation and one on doing the cognitive walkthrough style things. They're like, I don't know, 4-minute courses. It just takes you through the process, and it's super simple to follow. And that way you can actually start doing these things on your team yourself. If it's something, getting the whole team involved and interested in working out what other people might think about their product.
Yeah, I would echo the trying to get everybody to do it together too, because the other thing is that somebody else might have well, one, a different perspective or a different insight about how something was put together, or some insight about why it is that way. But also, even if they come to the exact same conclusion as you would have on their own, later when you're talking about it, you don't have to reference it as your conclusion. You can say, that was your idea, or that was your observation. And it naturally builds in, sort of engagement and involvement along the way.
That's a really good point. It's really important to much as you may feel like you want to demonstrate how much value you added by being this awesome UX person, it's much more important to get the team to think that they came up with these ideas, that they own them, and they take them through to conclusion. Yeah. Any other Any other things we should be talking about getting teams starting out on UX work?
And we've covered. I think we've covered lots of good stuff.
I would be curious to hear in a couple of weeks if anybody tries any of these things out. Let us know, y'all. Yeah,
let us know. You can contact us at chat@stickynotes.chat if you want to email us. Tweet us at stickynoteschat. You can contact us through our website too, which is where you'll also find all our previous episodes. We had a couple of questions during the session which were really on other topics than what we're talking about this week. So I'd suggest that the people who are asking those questions check out the stickynotes.chat website, where we've got some of our previous sessions up. There was a question on portfolios that we definitely chatted a lot about portfolios in a previous session. Can't remember right now which one it was. Amanda, we were just saying, Cory and I, at the beginning of this, we've done 20 episodes. This is our 20th episode. Isn't that wild?
It's kind of like this is a thing now.
So if you want to get in touch with us individually, you can do so through LinkedIn. You can find each of us on LinkedIn, and you should follow each of us because we rotate between the three of us who hosts this each week. So if you follow all of us, you will then get notifications in your LinkedIn profile when we go live. You can ignore those if you want, but if you're interested in listening to what we have to say, that's how you can find out. Follow Sticky Notes chat hashtag too, because we use that when we're making announcements about this kind of stuff. So that's it for this week. Thank you so much to Cory and Amanda for joining us. Amanda, I'm so glad you could join. I'm sorry you're meeting beforehand.
Sorry that I was late, but I'm glad that I could make it.
Yeah, and I think it really helped point out to people that this isn't some kind of rehearsed thing we do. We just do this live just to chat through it with each other as much as anything else. I've never met these two people in person.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
We always.
It's gonna be weird when we do.
Yeah, we'll be taking it in turns and waiting for the other person to talk and stuff in the same way as we do when we're online like this. Amanda, over to you. So yeah, thanks everybody for joining us this week. And with that, I'm going to say goodbye. And please join us same time next week, 10 Pacific, 1 Eastern time, which is what we do every Thursday for these sessions. And until then, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you then.
Stay well.